Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and with me in the Rabbit Hole studio today, he is an accomplished producer and the man behind Rollin Studios, Mr. Anthony Argento. Welcome, Anthony.
How you doing? Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm very honored, and yeah.
It's great to have you, man. Thanks for schlepping over here. I know you're a Brooklyn guy, too,
Yes.
which is cool. But I want to talk about, because I know you from, we had worked together with Blake Farber on a commercial a while back.
That's correct.
And I think we've been going back and forth for a while trying to make this happen, so I'm glad that
Absolutely.
you can make it. So I want to talk about Rollin Studios. I want to talk about what you guys do, but first I want to talk about you and kind of get a sense of your background. So how did you get started in the whole show business thing? What's your origin story, so to speak?
I was born in the film industry. I have a father who is behind the industry. He works at Broadway stages, Luna Lighting. I worked in equipment shops from Expendable Plus to Tracking Shot. I worked in dolly companies, and I did work from the ground up. I moved on, and I thought my background was going to be architecture, and that's kind of what my father's background is. He more builds spaces instead of is more of he's not a producer or anyone in the film industry working in the productions. He works outside of them and kind of caters to them. So I went to school for design, architecture, interior design. I worked in many theaters. That's kind of what led me into going to school for that. Went to school for at Pace University, and I also went to New York Film Academy, and that's kind of where it brought me to today. I basically opened up a company, and it was originally geared towards helping students. We tried going at a route to kind of do some types of workshops for students and this and that, and one step led to another step, and that's where we are now.
So you came at it from the perspective of you're building the studios, building the buildings, and then you got interested in the production aspect of things.
Correct, in a way. I have a design background. I always was fascinated about art in every aspect, and my college professor, who was a interior designer, was also a production designer for a lot of theater shows, and he has artwork being shown at La Mama, the museum, in their archives. So he was a known person, and then I started working in Astoria Performance Arts Center for a couple of years, and push came to shove, and I said, if I can do theater, I should put myself into film. So I went back into the film industry.
Cool. And now with Rollin Studios, kind of, if you can, in a nutshell, like what's the, how would you describe, you guys have been around for about 10 years now.
Give or take.
And you said you started out doing more educational type stuff, and now you're doing full productions.
Correct.
What kind of productions do you guys work on? How would you describe what you guys do?
In the beginning, we were basically helping schools provide spaces and finding students locations to film in, to designing their sets, to helping them produce, manage, and find other crew members and collaborations. That's a lot of what we are today. And we basically kind of expanded little by little, and we went from doing shorts to commercials to features to TV shows, you name it.
What kind of talk about some of the projects? Can you give me some highlights? Brag a little bit if you would.
We've done so many. I can say my first feature we shot was Indiana, and it was probably, I don't know if it's bragging or not, it was a hard production. It came out to be very well done. And believe it or not, our DP, Anna, and our production designer worked on a film that was bought from A24 called Farewell.
Oh, I've heard that. I've heard of that
And
picture.
it
It's
just
doing
got
really
a
well.
Golden Globe for
Fantastic.
Best Actress for Aquafina.
Awesome. And then you guys, I know because we worked on a commercial together.
Yep.
Would you say, is it more like content creation, like commercials, promotional videos? Is that more the bread and butter, or are you guys more on the narrative and documentary film side?
I mean, we basically focus on narratives. We've done commercials, we've done everything. We did Korean TV shows. We've done a feature or two from Thailand to Chinese TV shows to Chinese features. We're geared for doing a Russian feature next couple of months. So we're very international.
Is that something that kind of happened organically, or is that like a business decision? Say, hey, this is where the opportunity is. Let's look to the east and things like that.
I worked on a lot of productions in-house in New York. My first film working was a TV show for Nickelodeon called Naked Brothers Band. It was the Wolf family, and I grew with a lot of producers. I worked with Ken Keller to Jim Chory, so like producers of Marvel, to Related Pictures, to a lot of big companies, and I just felt that through family relations to being kind of established through the family, I wasn't growing at the rate I wanted to. So I kind of dropped everything that I knew and got up and started doing projects from another world. And it expanded.
What was the biggest difference going from like more conventional world to like going out on your own? I mean, I'm assuming there was kind of a learning curve there that you had to, embrace and learn. And most, film stuff is like it's learn on the fly. It's like learn on the job kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What were the biggest differences there?
Language barrier. That was the...
You're not fluent in Russian or Chinese or Korean?
Not at all. Language barrier and communications was tough, and understanding their systems that are completely different from how you shoot in America to how they shoot in China to Korea to Russia. They have us be working 24 hours a day, and you have to understand. They have to basically get them to understand that it's a different system. You're coming to America, whether it's California or Florida or Alaska, we've shot all over, and that was the biggest and hardest thing, to kind of get them into understanding our system and how to work and kind of combine the two.
What was the first production? Was that a feature film or a commercial?
Yes. My first Asian production was Law of Jungle. It was a Korean show for SBS, and I was basically a production manager on the show. I started off finding them a space, and one step came to another where we started collaborating. I started helping them, and all of a sudden, I'm actually an actor on the show. So yeah,
You're kind of doing everything.
I'm basically in 7 episodes of the show, and I was a manager on the show, basically finding out. The whole show revolves around a group of Koreans coming to America for the first time, and they have to make a living and survive and find jobs and work. And basically what I was doing was I got them to work on productions, to neighborhood companies, and it was really funny. It was really live shows. It wasn't scripted or anything, and the production team actually had them all set up, put cameras in the warehouses, and had them living in a empty warehouse,
like a Big Brother situation or something like that.
Yeah, and it was an impressive way how they did it, but we did it, and it was a very successful show for years.
What's like the latest feature you guys have worked on? Because I saw a number of things on the website that you guys had going, and I got to say, it all looks really impressive. The trailers and everything look terrific.
Thank you.
Is that mostly for overseas market, or is that stuff that you're trying to distribute here as well?
I have a lot of projects in development. I have a lot of projects just wrapped. One of the last big projects that we did was called Lost in Russia, that will be screening pretty soon in China, and probably AMC movie theaters. And it's probably one of the top 5 films in all of China.
What's the story of that show? What's the story of the movie?
Well, they travel all through China to Russia to America, and it's a comedy show. It's really geared towards the Asian market.
For these types of productions now, are you like co-producing with a Chinese production company?
Yeah. A lot of those projects.
How does that work, like in terms of like who's going to handle what, and are you just kind of like the New York production house for them?
Yeah, for the international productions, we have done our in-house projects that we have the rights to and all that. But there are a lot of the major projects we're co-production, and we basically do all the services, to hiring the crew, to doing the budget, to finding the locations, and legal work and all that kind of stuff.
I imagine that the system is different, like when they're doing something over there as opposed to what you guys do over here. And if they want to use locations in Manhattan or in the United States, it's much easier for you to do it than it is. I can only imagine what the legal hoops that one has to jump through if you're a foreign production trying to work in America. But you guys also work on domestic productions too.
Of course. It is very hard. I wouldn't get up and go shoot somewhere else that I've never shot with. I would obviously hire a in-house team that's from China or Puerto Rico or wherever you are.
Right. I've heard a lot of directors say that when they go, if you go to Italy or something like that, hire an Italian crew, or if you wind up in Asia, hire an Asian crew, just because they know how things work over there. I've actually had people come work on my sets from other countries just to see how it works, and just to see if you speak another language, like what do you call this over here, and how does it, what's the dynamic like? Do you guys have any upcoming projects that you want to brag about?
One of our biggest projects that we're still in development, we did a short maybe 2 years ago. The short was called Last Fair Deal, and we have the script, we have the rights, and we're trying to go forward on finding the development funds. It's called Robert Johnson, and it's a biopic about Robert Johnson,
the blues guitar player.
The blues guitar player.
Awesome, man. That's really cool. I'm wondering who you want to cast for Johnson.
That's still up in the air. I can't talk too much about that.
I'm sure not, but that would be the first thing I'd think of.
Yeah.
To play. You get somebody like a Chadwick Boseman, or somebody who's like hot right now, who because there's a lot of great up and coming young guys. But you have to remember he died when he was like 27.
27.
So
correct.
you need a good young actor.
He was the first of the 27 club.
Yeah, unfortunately. Are you gonna? Well, I don't know if you can talk about this, but are you going to go into the whole deal with the devil scenario and or approach that at all?
Well, there will be adaptations of it, but what we plan on is doing it in a natural state where he actually really trained. If you're really familiar with the story, and this is all public knowledge, he was one of the worst guitar players in the beginning, and somehow his wife and his newborn kid died, and he fell into a huge hole and disappeared, and his a relative of him took him away, and he fell so deep, and where he disappeared, and everyone said he left and went to go make a deal with the devil. But in theory, and I mean, the facts are that he actually went to go train and really play the guitar and kind of melt his sorrows away, and that's where we want to go towards.
It's a fascinating story, and it's become a legend, But he, for those of you who don't know much about Robert Johnson, but he's like the godfather of blues guitar. There would be no Chicago blues or Delta blues or even rock and roll without that particular guy. So. And you're right, he was the first of the 27 Club, along with like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and all those people. But that sounds great, man. That sounds like I would totally watch that movie because he's a fascinating character. Before we get going here, I wanted to say, because you've been doing this for a while, you've been doing this for like over 10 years. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's looking to get into production? I always like to hear different people's takes on it. Like if you had somebody who's either sort of break into the business, or somebody who's kind of maybe stuck at one level and wants to get to the next level, what would you say to them?
One, starting into the business, you got to really have to, there's like a good, I would say, 5 tips to know before you're really considering getting yourself into the film industry. And, it's basically communication. You really got to know how to communicate. The film productions are really team oriented, and if you can't really communicate back and forth, I mean, this film industry is really tough to be in without that. You gotta emotions and understanding stress and kind of.
You have to be empathetic, in other words.
Yeah. You gotta really control your emotions.
So you're saying, like, emotionally, like, you have to kind of keep your cool in that. In other words.
Yeah. Sometimes this industry can be very stressful. I'm sure you and I both know. And, it can really saying one thing to some person it's just like a ticking time bomb, and it does escalate towards the rest of the crew. It kind of like a domino effect.
You find that in part of being in a producer role, you're kind of presiding over that and sort of controlling the madness, or herding the cats, as they say?
How I look at my job, I'm like the mother and the father, and I got to make sure the kids are fed. I got to make sure they're here on time. I got to make sure they're off out on a certain hour, and that's how I take this job.
Was there any kind of like key piece of was there any particular instance when that kind of came to fruition for you, where you kind of realized that, oh, this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is what the job is, kind of thing? Absolutely.
I don't even. There's so many of those things that have come up to me. I've had to. When you're starting out, you're doing everything. I was even cooking. I would have to make sure the milk's there. I have to make sure the coffee's there, and I'll hear the complaints that there's no milk here. Go run and get it, or little things to that. To we need this equipment. We forgot this equipment. We checked out, and we forgot this equipment behind, or we failed to miss this, and their mistakes are our mistakes, so if I fail to do something, they fail to do something, it's a team effort.
I know what you're saying. It's always those stupid little things that hold up production. Like literally somebody forgets a tripod plate or a cord or something, and
Absolutely.
Some poor schmuck has got to run around for an hour to try to find out what they, and those little things add up, and having people there to be able to kind of field all those different problems, because it always happens. It always happens. Like technical technical misery abound in the film industry. But that's great, man. I definitely want to hear more about what you guys are doing, and if you have directors or people involved with the film that you want to come talk on the show, let me know. I'm really interested to know about the Robert Johnson project, because I know people have done the story, but they've done more of the myth, and I've seen some documentaries on him. But I'd love to see like a good good biopic on him.
There's a documentary on Netflix that just came out, and our book that we have the option to is called Up Jump the Devil. You should take a look at that, because that has all his the newest information. And there's so many things to talk about him. A lot of people don't know that his body was missing for years. They couldn't find his birth certificates and his death certificates, and they didn't know how old he was, and all these types of things.
Yeah, it was a real. He was kind of a mysterious character for a long time, and stuff that I've heard is like even about his recordings. Somebody told me once that a lot of the stuff that we hear as Robert Johnson was recorded or played back at the wrong speed, so it sounds higher and faster than it was. Correct. And I would be fascinated to see if anybody ever had like the original tapes or the original wax that I guess he would have recorded on a phonograph back then. Yeah. Which would have been like a wax cylinder and all. I mean, it's fascinating how that stuff worked. Yeah. But anything like that, let me know, and we'll try to get some more people on from Rolling. Rolling is great to work with. My stint over there was very brief, but everybody was really nice, and you guys are a pleasure to work for. Anyway, we're going to wrap up in a minute here, but for those the folks at home, if they want to know more about you, more about Rolling Studios, where can they find you on the web? Rollin-Studios.com.
You can find me out there. I'm on IMDb. Send me an email, call me. I'm always available.
Thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more episodes of this show and more of our content, including our movie reviews, you can find them on our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. We're also on Patreon, so you can find us at patreon.com/norestoftheweekend. Once again, love to thank my guest, Anthony Argento, for schlepping all the way from Greenpoint. I appreciate it, buddy. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.